Alright guys, so I was thinking about buying George Orwell's novel 1984. However, before I buy it, I want to check the most reliable source of criticism for any book: Amazon's most critical reviews. Only there will I find the most insightful comments about this book. Basically, I'm going to be telling you if the review is accurate or real bad, and then we can come to a conclusion on if you should waste your time on this book. Okay, review 1. Amazon customer says, 1 star, Oni-chan is watching you? This isn't even the real book, just some edited version someone put up. And 8 people found this helpful. Well, I don't agree. I think this review is completely dumb. I, for one, completely support George Orwell, embracing Asian culture in his book like this. I thought Oni-chan was a well-written and fleshed-out character, and upon further research, Oni-chan literally means Big Brother. This was genius by Orwell, plain and simple. He really did his research, and it shows in the book. I gotta give this review a 0 out of 10. Terrible. Danny says, must read. Not. And that's going to be a 2-star from Danny. And she says, I understand this may be an unpopular opinion, but this book is extremely overrated. Yes, the foundation of the book is solid, but the storytelling is very flawed and uninteresting. He has a good idea of how he wants to represent the government and life under opposition, but he really bombs the execution. It makes a big deal about a certain event, and it doesn't address it again. I don't think the author really understands the love to write convincingly about it. Truthfully, even the torture was a bore. The most interesting part about the book is 2 sentences long when he is describing someone using the restroom. 1 person found that helpful. Honestly, guys, George Orwell just doesn't understand love enough to write about it. Call me a hater, but me and Danny are just being honest. This guy's so lonely and such a beta just physically. He's probably incapable of understanding what love feels like. In reality, his mother probably died while he was at a young age, and he got no affection as a child, and so it led him to start making this emotionless book. It's more of a tragedy than anything. And to go back to the review, I just didn't think the torture was all that interesting. Yeah, okay, he gets flayed alive and electrocuted, gets stuck in a cage full of rats. I just don't care. Really? I didn't think it was good enough. The restroom part, though, oh boy. Clifton C. Cartwright gives this book 1 star and says, this is a dark, sad book. This book was required reading 40 and 50 years ago. It represented a possible future for the world. It did not happen, and the reading is sad and depressing at this time. I would have preferred to have not read this book. 1 person found that helpful. But I agree, this book is just too sad for me. I cried on almost every page. Especially the book by Goldstein. When he started talking about transatlantic politics, I just couldn't help but weep. Plus, the events in this book didn't even happen. Why didn't Orwell at least have enough decency to tell us the book was fiction? Here I was thinking all they happened just a few decades ago, just to find out I was reading fiction the whole time. Birdman gives the book 3 stars and titles his review, hard to follow, but / what a life is ultimately worth to a Trump-like dictator / commit ! Hard to follow, effin' slow at times with a Z. If you see you can newspeak when you law text or double think cool hot lyrics, and yet we must beware its warnings, especially the current state's concept of war is peace and slavery is freedom, upside down ! Again, someone found that helpful. I'm just starting to think that gets given to every comment. But I really think this one speaks for itself. Birdman doesn't need any further explanation here. Kindle customer says 2 stars, depression. If I had been as depressed in the 1970s when I first read this as I am now, I would have killed myself. This is probably the life waiting for those not invited to Galt Gulick. Well, I do have to say, I too almost killed myself while reading 1984. And obviously that's just because the book is very depressing. Thankfully I didn't read this in the 1970s. Am I right, guys? Yeah, but wait, I really don't know what Galt Gulick is. I gotta look this up. Well, okay. Well, see you guys in Galt Gulick, or not. No, still not entirely sure what that is, but hey. Zachary says 2 stars. Too much romance, not enough entertainment. I love literature of all types, including classics, but this one was a real drag. Extremely predictably, even if you're clueless going in. I would have enjoyed it more if Orwell didn't focus the entire story on the romance. Yes, exactly. There's way too much romance and character development here. When I decided to read 1984, I wanted two things: 19 and 84. Authors, stop giving us realistic characters and just let me enjoy my story about British Nazis, okay? It's like if the book 50 Shades of Grey was about sex or something weird and not just a painting guide. Honestly, I completely agree with Zachary here. Amazon customer says 1 star, too depressing for me. Too depressing for me. I read 160 pages and gave up. I mean, honestly, the overall consensus seems to be this book is just too sad to read, and I frankly agree. The part where Sam died was very sad for me since he was my favorite character, and I definitely didn't have to look him up just to remember his name. That's just a testament to how memorable these characters are and how sad it was when they all died. Here we have Graham with the 1 star. Don't remember? Don't remember. Yeah. Alright, this one's a long one, so settle in. Me Bailey says, 3 stars, OMG, why did they make high school kids read this? Snore! Exclamation point. I struggled at 46 to read this book. I can't imagine how my 17-year-old self would have done it. However, now that I've lived 46 years and have seen how the world changes, wow, this author really had a telescope into the future. I suggest reading it, no pushing through it just to compare Orwell's vision and how horrifyingly matching the directing it in which our now world is heading. This would be a great read if rewritten today. I honestly couldn't tell you if Bailey likes the book or not, but I mean 3 stars? I've seen worse reviews. Wise Woman says 3 stars. Scary. Scary? Is this our future? Yeah, this book is too scary. Maybe just close the pages? Dennis Anderson says 3 stars. Fake news, fake history. Maybe the might of the US and Trump's presidency overturns everything that Obama stood for or introduced. Hate Muslims, racially biased, supports the right-wing fundamentalist of the Midwest. Yes! This whole time I thought the book was real, but thankfully Dennis Anderson has assured me Donald Trump will keep this from happening. Our future is safe, Americans. Rest easy. I'm so glad we have a president who overturned Barack Obama's hatred of Muslims. God bless the USA and God bless George Orwell. Amazon customer says, don't bother. Far out predictions of the world after a nuclear holocaust. Difficult to read. 2 people found that helpful. I mean, I agree. The story's just a little too far out. Mass murders, nuclear bombings, things like this just don't happen in real life. Well, guys, my final rating for this book is an 8 out of 10. It's definitely too scary, and it turns out the book's events didn't even really happen at all, which makes it a waste of time to read. Nobody likes fiction. And honestly, it was just too sad. I couldn't help but cry all the time, and it kind of stained the pages with the salt from my tears, and it kind of it was just a disaster. I can't bring it back to Second and Charles anymore. Honestly, just a terrible read according to these expert reviewers, and I'm inclined to feel the same. So I can only give this book a low score of an 8 out of 10. Pretty mediocre, but definitely not on the upper side of average. Thank you all for watching.
Hello, ladies and gents. This is book review. Okay, well, really, we're going to be looking at pictures and anything related to do with 1984. Just to start off, we'll just go with the surface meaning of this meme. Oh, I love reading too. Do you have any favorite books? Says the one person. Yes, 1984. And the other person says, "Wow, so many." Now this is just, if this isn't funny, then I don't know exactly what is. Just, it has all your humor. It has your dad humor, and it has correct punctuation for all of the English teachers. I don't know exactly what else you could want from this meme. Now, 1984 in general, it's just a great book. It's just one of the best books I've ever read in my whole life. If I could meet George Orwell right now and tell him how proud I am that he wrote this book. Now, 1984 isn't just a simple book. It's a book about a man named Winston. The greatest character, the greatest protagonist ever written into a story. Now, it's just, I don't even I'm at loss of words right now of how amazed I am at this book, to be honest. I mean, it starts off with just a simple man and he has a thought. And that's where it should have all ended. The thought police should have come in and murdered him, but it didn't. He had a thought and he got away with it. He's living under a government that has controlled his whole life and he doesn't know what to do. He finally has his own ideas and decides that we should overthrow the government because what they're doing is wrong. Now, I mean, it's not a terrible start to the book, but then it just goes downhill from there very, very quickly. We start off with meeting the first character, Julia, which is just a hooker that wants to sleep with any guy. She takes advantage. Well, you know what? I won't say takes advantage. She sleeps with Winston for 90% of the books, and any time Winston talks about rebellion, she just falls asleep. I mean, I know it sounds like all women here, but come on, we're talking about overthrowing government. Now, she's just a problem. She's partly the reason why Winston and her got caught. So, let's continue. O'Brien is this character that Winston just seems to be fascinated with, to the point where you might think that Winston's actually gay. He keeps having dreams about O'Brien. Now, it doesn't specify what kind of dreams those are, but I'll just leave that up to your imagination. He works with the government. Well, he's secretly not secretly against the government, because he's not really against the government, he's just trying to arrest Winston, which eventually happens. So, I mean, that's O'Brien, the man that just gives Winston's dreams for days. Now, Winston does get caught, which brings the ultimate downfall of him, which is rats. Winston hates rats. Now, why? The world may never know. This book is a mystery. There's a whole bunch of hidden meanings, like, I don't even think George Orwell knew about. Like, come on. Now, when Winston gets caught, he goes to jail and he finds a fat hooker that falls on top of him that has the same last name as him, which makes him think that might actually be his mom, which is kind of depressing. But from there, he goes to the room and gets tortured, and then in the end, we're left to guess whether or not he was shot or not. Now, I don't really, I mean, I know it's dystopia, but I mean, our boy Winston has been through so much. He just deserves a win. He sleeps with a hooker. His mom and I don't even know if his dad are dead. The party rules everything. Yeah, I just want to talk about how bipolar the party is here. They're at war with East Asia, Eurasia, Africa, Europe. It just changes. And I don't know. This book is just all over the place, and I don't really know if I like it. Like, going back to this meme, up front it might look like a simple little dank meme. I'm never saying that again. but the deeper meaning behind it is insane. Now, if you look, it says, "Oh, I love reading too." Do you have any favorite books? Yes, 1984. Wow, so many. Just to begin with, we can see that this has been screenshotted from a phone, probably without one of the person's permission. So, we are spying in on this person's private life. I already feel like the party. What else could we pull from this? Let's look at the picture down at the bottom. Now, this picture is of a beautiful man, and this leads me to believe that this is Big Brother. I think the man on the bottom is Big Brother, of my own opinion. I would say it doesn't even get a rating. That's how off the scale this book is. Now, George Orwell, my man died at the age of 47. If only he was alive today to see how many kids appreciated this wonderful book he made. He's a smart man that wrote smart books, and it's sad to see him go. Okay, that's all, folks. We're gonna read this first one by Anonymous. Okay? So now we have this thing called hate speech. You never went fool, 1984. Never go fool, 1984. Looks like you've had too much to think. Support your local thought police. Don't speak out of question. Now this is fun. What's this? I don't think it's a coincidence that the founder of the Orwellian political thought policing Big Brother-esque Facebook was born in 1984. Oh my, do you guys get the joke? The greatest man on this earth, Mark Zuckerberg, was born in 1984, and Facebook listens in on your conversations. Now that is pure comedy. Now let's just talk about the book. Like, let's just take a break from the memes and let's just talk about the book. He has Winston. He shops and he sleeps. And then he gets caught. And then he gets interrogated. And in the end, we're left to decide whether he dies or not. Now, if it was my book, I would say he didn't die. Because Winston is a lover, not a fighter. For there's no other book that will tell you this story, like George Orwell did. But let's get back to the memes. Reads in 1984, seen in BBC, Fox News, War on Terror is peace. Sharia is slavery. Islamophobia is strength. What a smart message. I love this guy. Now look, why would this man have sex with a woman just to rebel from the government? If I'm being completely serious, this book was absolutely just trash. Like, I don't care if the government is spying on me. I have nothing to hide to begin with. I'm not some far leftist piece of crap that thinks the government wants to just screw up everything. Yes, thank you. Now, thoughts on the book in a good way? I mean, I like the character development. I like where they take them and everything. Now, would I agree with the description he gave him? Not necessarily. I don't like my main character being a fat obese man with blisters all over his body. It's not my kind of type. You know what I'm saying? It's just a very, how do I say, old-fashioned book, you know? It's always about the bigger meaning. I don't want the bigger meaning. I just want straight there. I just want to read it and understand. It's just not my style.
If you're hearing this message, you're either dead or you're in the North Augusta High School library. Now, whenever I wanted to start this, I wanted to roast the main cast of characters. Their names rhyme with Julia and Winston. That's right, I was gonna roast Julia and Winston. But then I figured out that George Orwell had already done it so perfectly in his book that there was no way that I was going to be able to top this by doing anything in my power. So I decided that I would just do all the character analysis on these two and a couple other of our favorite characters from this book. First, let's do Winston. Winston is literally the embodiment of who we don't want to become. A man in his late midlife crisis who's overweight and has a varicose ulcer. This guy is literally said to be bigger than Peter Griffin, and he has teeth worse than George Washington, as he had 10 false teeth, and he had a giant sore on his leg. I feel bad for him. I mean, like, I'm kind of questioning at this point whether or not George Orwell had a bully in high school named Winston that just that he just decided to get him back by writing about him in this book. I truly don't understand everything that is going on with Winston and just how he can become this character. It's truly amazing to me. I think that George Orwell did this kind of on purpose, though. I believe that he made Winston this terrible, ugly-looking character to try and become something that George and everyone would try to push away from. And I think that whenever you're trying to push away from this character, he found the most grotesque ways to do it in our society. Especially if we're thinking in George Orwell's society where it wasn't okay to be overweight. Having bad teeth was even worse than it is today. And just a varicose ulcer, you were basically the biggest nerd. I mean, in my mind, there's no way. I mean, this guy literally said to Julia right before they were gonna have sex that he wanted to smash her head open with a rock. I mean, like, what? Like, he wanted to kill this lady and set it to her face. Enough of Winston, let's move on to Julia. Julia, I think that her character is really explained through Winston. I think that they complement each other, but mainly Winston complements Julia. The fact that Winston was so ugly and Julia was still ready to have sex with him was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of gross in a sense, but it was also kind of this idea of like, hey, I don't care as long as we are going against the party. And for that, it was very confusing for me. I didn't understand it a whole bunch. I mean, this is kind of not only just weird, but just like, that's the one way that you can find to rebel against people, is by having sex. I also do think that she has some mental problems. I'm not going to lie here. Julia literally laughed when Winston said that he wanted to bust her head open. That he literally said to her that he wanted to kill her. And she laughed. I think that that really complements Julia's character in a sense that I don't think any other character really could. I think that the perfect mix for this type of world would be Julia and Winston. I think that these characters truly are amazing. The way that George Orwell makes them, he makes them in such a roast that they're just so good. They just fit each other so well, and it really is amazing. And I find myself just falling in love with it every single time. I was really upset whenever I saw that they betrayed each other, although everyone probably saw it coming. Once you get caught by the thought police, it's pretty much a telltale ending. I mean, you might as well just sit back and watch the story unfold as O'Brien and the party just tortures them to death until they just have to follow the rules. And although it is a sad ending, you know, you wish you could have seen Winston and Julia take this over. I mean, it would have been the most ridiculous rebellion I would have ever seen, and I wasn't expecting it at all. But I think that it would have been funny, and that's probably what makes it the best part, is that it would have been hysterical to see these two, who are so different, yet so similar. Next character I'm going to do an analysis on is O'Brien. Now, I really didn't understand O'Brien in the first part one. I can't really say much about him. He was definitely a mysterious character to me. I never saw really much about him. I never really understood what made chills go down Winston, or why he felt that connection to O'Brien. And then whenever it started to pick up in part 2, I think that I saw myself looking towards O'Brien a little bit more, why they saw that connection. I see a lot of similarities between O'Brien and Winston, and the fact that they're both kind of this sociopath type figure. There's just no way that he can, not be the way that he is, and the books still have the same meaning and ending. So I think it was very important for him to be the way that he was. I think that he kind of embodies the thought police. Like, you think that you can trust them, you think that they will keep you safe, but at the moment that you see this, or that you think this, they're going to turn their back on you. You can never trust anyone, I think, is the main message that O'Brien gives out, especially political figures. They are all in it for themselves, and they're all corrupt, and I think that O'Brien is really a really good embodiment of that. And lastly, Big Brother, or as the Japanese like to call it, Oni-chan. Big Brother is really kind of this mysterious figure. We don't know much about Big Brother other than he is the leader of the party. He is kind of the face of the party. I don't think anybody really knows much about Big Brother. I don't think anybody really understands. I certainly have my skeptics about Big Brother. I think that he might be some type of robot or something. I don't know. That's just me, my brain running wild on different imagination. Because Big Brother represents this dictator. He represents this person who you can find leading these types of organizations. Why is Big Brother not really this defined person? Why doesn't he ever show up? Why is everybody left to their own things? And I was thinking about this, but at the same time, have any dictators really been in control? No. I believe that the dictator is just a puppet master. He just moves the people around the way that he wants to. He manipulates everything, and then the people that are under him are the strings. They're the people that are actually moving everything. And then the people, the pros, the people that work for the party, they are the puppets. They are pulled by the strings. The strings being people like O'Brien and the Inner Party that really control everything, make everything work for Big Brother. I mean, Big Brother is really just this kind of person who, you can never really find true allegiance with, but everybody trusts him. Because there is no other option. It's really hard to just kind of see how all of this pans out. You see it through someone's eyes who sees the faults in the parties, and as you want to see him do something about it, you could desperately see that there's nothing he can do about it. There's nothing that he can try to manipulate. There's nothing that he can try to change. I mean, Winston, for me, isn't the most likable character, but he's the most realistic one in this position. I don't think that anybody else can really fit Winston's role. I think that Winston is the only one that I can see fitting his role perfectly, and I think George Orwell knew this. I think that he saw a lot of different roles. You can't have a hero role in an unhappy story. You can't have a hero role with someone who likes having sex with someone who rebels to the party. You can't have a hero role who's so oblivious to tricks that he goes towards someone whenever he tells you can't even trust your own back, yet goes to someone that he thinks is a member of the resistance and just goes against everything that he says. You're finding everything that George Orwell wanted you to find. You're getting the message that he found and the one that he could get across. It's everything that he wanted. And I think that that's really important, especially with just the whole story in general and the whole message and the whole theme that George Orwell is trying to pursue.